this video, we will talk about general concept of Cosmos, because this YouTube channel here is primarily focused on Cosmos and its ecosystem. I've been covering it now since nearly 2 years. The original idea for Cosmos actually came up pretty early on, around 2013, 2014, when Jae Kwon discovered that Bitcoin is just not scalable, right? Back at the time, we pretty much only had Bitcoin and a few altcoins, a few proof of stake attempts that didn't really gain traction and that were also not really sustainable. But Jae was one of the first people to recognize that Bitcoin isn't scalable. It's also bad for the environment. And he just invented basically Tendermint, which was one of the first functional, maybe the first functional proof of stake implementations in the whole world, right? So back then we're talking that Vitalik Buterin, also Vlad Zamfir, they were researchers on the Ethereum side, and Jae just cracked the code on Tendermint, which would later become one of the most widely adopted proof of stake algorithm in the world. Now, during that time onwards, Jae met Ethan Buchman, who would become the co-founder of Cosmos. So Jae and Ethan are both the co-founders of Cosmos, and they would also bring on more people very early on, such as Jihan Trembek and also Zaki Manian, who really caught on to that idea to say, hey, we have Tendermint as a functional proof of stake consensus algorithm. We're basically pioneers in proof of stake. Let's build an entire ecosystem around that. And that's where the philosophy of Appchains became really a thing, right? But let's go slowly and let's do one step at a time. Cosmos in its entirety is not just one blockchain, right? When you hear Cosmos, you most likely just think about Atom and the Cosmos Hub. But at this point, the Cosmos Hub is just a competitive blockchain within Cosmos, which is the internet of blockchains, right? So Cosmos is not just one chain. What is Cosmos then? Well, Cosmos is basically the internet of blockchains, which means that it's composed of core technology pieces such as the Cosmos SDK, Tendermint, and also IBC, but also a lot of functional applications that are built on these technology pieces and are all interconnected through IBC, which is the interoperability standard in Cosmos. And we're gonna look into the ecosystem in a second, but it's quite impressive how many chains are already connected through IBC and how big the Cosmos ecosystem actually is. The Cosmos white paper was written in 2016. They did a fundraiser in 2017, raised around $16 million US. Over the years, they have just been building on IBC, on the Cosmos SDK, and to improve Tendermint, and launched the first blockchain that is implementing all these technology pieces sometime around 2019 with the implementation of IBC, which was the final piece to complete the original vision of Cosmos in early 2021. That means that with the launch of IBC, the original white paper, and you have to really imagine this, the original white paper of Cosmos has been completed. And that was also one of the first things that got me really hooked, is when I heard this from Jack Sempolin, who was one of the core engineers in Cosmos, I was like, this is impossible. Like, no crypto project ever achieved their white paper. Well, Cosmos actually did, and is now working with all these technology pieces, working very smoothly, connecting more than 50 chains that are in production as of today. So what is the big vision of Cosmos then, if all this is already achieved? Well, the big vision is to basically prove the Appchain thesis and to connect millions of blockchains to each other. Remember how I said in the beginning that the idea is that every single idea, every single product runs on its own chain, basically every single application? Well, that is actually the core difference to fat protocols such as Ethereum or Solana, for example. In Ethereum and Solana, you have the core assumption that you have one base layer chain, which is in Ethereum, now after the proof of work switch to proof of stake, is also a POS chain. And every application is built as a smart contract on top of that base layer chain, right? So you have a very fat protocol at the bottom, and every application that's built on top of it basically depends on the sustainability, the security, the scalability of that base layer chain. You have the same thing in Solana, and we've seen with a couple of outages that Solana had over the past few months, whenever the Solana main chain is down, everything on top of Solana is also down, right? So in order to mitigate that and to also like have a more internet-like representation of the blockchain economy, Cosmos implements Appchains as their core philosophy, right? For example, Right now we have the Cosmos Hub, which is the chain on which Atom resides. And we have Osmosis, which is the chain where the Osmo coin and also the biggest DEX in terms of liquidity and users resides on the Osmosis chain, right? So if Atom and the Cosmos Hub would go down because there would be a bug, because the chain would halt, Osmosis would be unaffected. And we've seen with the collapse of Terra, which was one of the largest Cosmos chains in the world by far, by market cap, it did not affect the uptime of Atom, Osmo, Stargaze, Juno, any other chain in Cosmos, right? That really proved the concept under real world circumstances and was a big stress test also for the Cosmos ecosystem, right? Terra collapse proved that Cosmos app chains work. The whole idea also has strong benefits. And that is really the core difference between the Fed protocol thesis, which we have in Ethereum and Solana, and the app chain thesis, which Cosmos pursues, right? Avalanche, I think, is kind of like in the middle. They actually also have multiple chains and they have subnets, which is quite similar. And also Polkadot has a very similar vision where app chains are basically parachains that are connected to the relay chain so that the chain on which DOT resides, the relay chain in Polkadot, is basically simply a security source for these parachains, right? And in a similar way, Cosmos also now wants to implement shared security, but we can also talk about the Cosmos Hub and its specific role later on in this video. It's very important for me just so that you understand the difference between app chains and the Fed protocol thesis, right? So that's the first differentiator, what makes Cosmos different. Now, Tendermint, as being the first implementation of proof of stake in the world, also has very high performance. Well, first of all, Tendermint chains have a very low carbon footprint, right? As compared to obviously any proof of work chain. Right now, we only have a few left. Bitcoin obviously being the biggest one by far. Proof of stake, in my opinion, is also the future. And it helps that Cosmos has basically co-invented proof of stake. Very environment friendly, which is super important. Also, obviously, you have much lower fees. Through proof of stake, you also have higher throughput and you have fast transactions with a finality of between 6 and 7 seconds, I think is the average for Tendermint chains. On Ethereum, it used to be 13 seconds. I don't know if that's still the case, but sometime between 12 and 14 seconds, I guess. So it's almost twice as fast as Ethereum. And well, Bitcoin is 10 minutes and can be even much longer than that, right? So that's the block production time in Bitcoin. And by the way, Elon Musk himself said in a tweet once that the ideal block time for Dogecoin would be 6 to 7 seconds. So basically what he's looking for is he's looking for Tendermint and he's looking for Cosmos, basically. He just doesn't know it yet. Obviously, there are still improvements that can be made. There are chains that have stress tested Tendermint, such as Omniflix, which ran with over 700 validators, which means you don't have to sacrifice decentralization per se. And you also have chains like Fmos and Say Network that lowered the finality time to sub 2 seconds, right? There's even a chance to want to bring it to below 1 second, right? I think Ejective as well. So they're super fast chains. Now, another core technology piece is obviously the Cosmos SDK. Me as a non-developer, I can't tell you from my personal experience what the benefits are over, for example, Substrate. What I've heard though from developers, and you can watch to a lot of interviews that I made, is that it's there's a lot of tooling. Obviously, there could still be a lot more, but the SDK in Cosmos is quite complete to just launch your blockchain without crazy efforts. And developers really enjoy that environment. So that's why you see also more than 50 chains already live in production, and also chains switching and choosing also the Cosmos SDK to build their own chain, such as also Axelar, such as Celestia as well, or dYdX, which is building their custom Cosmos SDK-based chain with the launch of V4 of dYdX in just a few weeks or months. Now, let's look into what's probably the most interesting right now, which is the ecosystem, right? As of now, we currently have 263 apps and services that are built using Cosmos technology. Some of them you definitely know. Many of them are already live. Most of them, however, are not live yet, right? So they're not in mainnet yet. They don't have a coin live yet. For example, if I look at Anoma, if I look at Archway, right? They're already listed here, but they're not live yet. However, you also have something like Akash Network, which has been around for years, very early adopters, also Bend protocol that have been early adopters. They're building an Oracle network, but also Binance Chain, right? So that's the first chain that Binance launched before they launched BSC. Is also built on a variation of Tendermint and a variation of the Cosmos SDK. So that's really interesting, right? And you can see all these chains are built using the Cosmos SDK or Tendermint, and many of them also implement IBC, right? So that's the current stage of Cosmos. And you also see, for example, app chains like Juno Network, right, which is fully community owned and community governed, that implements Cosmos, which is a native smart contract platform in Cosmos. And through that, actually, you have an app chain with the purpose to be a smart contract platform. So you actually can build applications on it, just like Ethereum, right? So basically, in the Cosmos world, Ethereum would be an app chain for smart contracts. In the Cosmos world, Bitcoin would be an app chain for money. So basically, in Cosmos, scalability and interoperability happens through IBC, right? So you basically don't have just one chain that rules them all. Instead, you have all these chains that are all connected to each other, which also means much better UX and UI. And we are thinking now interchain and not multi-chain, which means that if you launch a product, you don't have to replicate it on other networks, which you see, for example, a lot in Ethereum, right? You have an application that goes live on Ethereum mainnet, and then they also have to replicate that onto Polygon, then they have to replicate that on Arbitrum, on all these other chains. Whereas in Cosmos, you just flow from chain to chain. You don't have to launch it on that other chain as well. Instead, through IBC, you can just interconnect to it, right? And that's the interchain philosophy versus the multi-chain philosophy. So we learned now Appchains versus Fed protocol thesis and multi-chain versus interchain, right? While Cosmos stands for the interchain approach, which means that IBC is the flagship protocol of Cosmos. And if you go here on mapofzones.com, you can see that currently there's 53 zones that are interconnected through IBC. And if you click on zones, you can actually see also what they're currently generating in terms of total IBC volume, right? In the last 24 hours, it has been roughly $19 million with over 160,000 transactions. And there's currently 2,786 channels between all these chains, right? So if you want to connect Osmosis to Cosmos Hub, you have to open a channel that connects Osmosis to the Cosmos Hub. If you want to connect Osmosis to Axelar, you have to open a new channel, right? So every single connection is a new Cosmos channel, and it's also being supervised by so-called relayers. Maybe that's some content for another video to go really deep on IBC. And in the past 30 days, IBC routed $8.8 billion worth of coins and tokens through the protocol, right? That's really, really insane, and that's a lot. And you can also see the most active pairs, you can see the biggest volume pairs. So on Map of Zones, you can see the creation of the Internet of Blockchains in real time, who has the most transactions, who has the most monthly active users on their own network, and then versus monthly active IBC users, right? So every wallet that has initiated at least one outward IBC transfer within that period of 30 days counts as an IBC user. And currently Osmosis has the most, obviously, because as a DEX, there's a lot of in and outflows. And when it comes to actual users that have at least initiated one transaction, the Cosmos Hub with more than 200,000 is by far the most active. And then you have Fmos and Osmosis. So you can already see, like, there's a lot of stuff going on. Now, if we talk about upcoming applications, as I said earlier, we have something, for example, like Celestia that is coming up, highly anticipated, huge team, very promising. What they're building is a modular blockchain framework that has not been seen before in crypto yet, but they basically enable maximum flexibility that you can separate the execution layer and the settlement layer, and have different VMs running on different consensuses. And that's really, really cool. That's probably maybe even the end game for crypto after all. But Celestia is launching using Cosmos technology. Then you have also dYdX coming over with billions of trading volume, hundreds of thousands of users. And also what I find really interesting is that we have a lot of applications that will bring IBC to other ecosystems, right? Such as Landslide Network, which is implemented as an Avalanche subnet, but also implements IBC. We have Composable Finance, which is a Polkadot and Kusama parachain. They implement IBC and Cosmos. Then you have Eclipse and Nitro that are implementing the Solana virtual machine, but they also implement IBC. So you see that IBC is kind of like spreading outside of Cosmos into other ecosystems. And I think that's very, very exciting. So now you've heard about all these applications. You've heard about Osmosis, about Stargaze, all these crazy volumes and users. If Atom and the Cosmos Hub is not the base layer chain for all the other chains in Cosmos, what is actually the purpose of the Cosmos Hub? And what is the future of the Cosmos Hub? In my opinion, the Cosmos Hub has a very bright future. Why? Because the killer application for the Cosmos Hub is going to launch very soon, and that is interchain security, which means that the Cosmos Hub will become a service provider to other chains in Cosmos. That means if you want to launch your new chain, but you don't want to set up your own validator set, which is currently what most chains in Cosmos are doing, but setting up your own validator set is a big extra step that you need to take. You need to onboard validators. You need to make sure it's decentralized. You need to deal with also with the economics around it, right? What if you could just launch a chain, but without having to launch your own security model and just borrow security from an already very secure chain? And that's interchain security, right? So you can launch your product and your application as a so-called consumer chain on top of the Cosmos Hub, which means you have your own chain, but you borrow the security from the Cosmos Hub, which means that Cosmos Hub validators validate blocks on that consumer chain. That's how these chains are secure, and that's how these chains can go to market much faster, right? And according to Fanek, we will see more than 2,500 chains packed to the Cosmos Hub through interchain security by 2030. Personally, I don't think it's too much about the quantity. It's more about the quality and the traction that these consumer chains might gain. But well, let's look into it. What's coming, right? At Cosmoverse, we've heard that Circle is building a consumer chain and brings native USDC issuance and other native assets to the Cosmos Hub. We also heard that Stride, which is implementing liquid staking, is coming as a consumer zone to the Cosmos Hub. We also heard Polymer. We heard a lot more chains that are coming to the Cosmos Hub. This is very exciting. And from there on, we will see Cosmos Hub and Atom to become more and more of a service provider when it also comes to MEV, when it comes to funding and treasury management. And also, that's something that is coming for sure at some point, is to basically adjust the tokenomics of Atom to this killer application, right? So there has been a proposal called Atom 2.0 that was actually rejected because the scope of the proposal was too big, but it will definitely be revised and there will be certain elements implemented into the Cosmos Hub. So that said, the Cosmos Hub has its future, in my opinion, definitely. It's too big to fail. It's very decentralized already. It can always be more decentralized, of course, but I think to see that there's still a lot of passion and a lot of stakeholders that actually care in the Cosmos Hub is a very positive sign. So I'm very bullish on the Cosmos Hub and also Osmosis and also many other chains in Cosmos, right? So yeah, that's kind of like the bottom line. What are my predictions from here on? My prediction is that the Cosmos Hub will establish itself as an interchain service provider. Osmosis will become the largest DEX in terms of users and liquidity at some point over the next 3 to 5 years, I guess. We will see liquid staking become a big thing, even though it has some concerns, but still users demand that, which you can see also on Ethereum, right? With Lido, for example. I think that a lot of Cosmos chains, that's my fourth prediction, a lot of Cosmos chains will enter the top 20, right? We already see a couple of them, but we need a lot more traction and increase in market cap for these Cosmos chains, right? For example, obviously Atom should be a top 20 coin, should actually be a top 10 coin in my opinion. Osmosis as well, FMOS as well, right? And then some of the smart contract chains like Agoric, Juno Network, right? Like these chains need to gain real traction and become a killer application to onboard a lot of users. And that's where a lot of investors will obviously also jump in and will support these chains, right? And I think that's a very organic, sustainable growth. So that said, I think Cosmos is well positioned to weather a bear market. Actually, Cosmos started in a bear market and has been around for so many years. So that bear market actually comes at a very good time, because now developers can actually focus on building the technology and are not distracted by market noise, environments, and external pressure. They can just focus on building. And I think that's the core message here. Cosmos are builders, they are shipping, they're innovative, they don't copy paste stuff. They are out there also not in a very tribal mindset to like be the Ethereum killer or be the Solana killer. It's more like, no, let's take the best from all these worlds, build an app chain, and if there's demand for it, if there's product market fit, it will gain traction. So that's the bottom line. I'm extremely bullish about it. And if you want to stay updated with everything in Cosmos, subscribe to this channel, like this video, share this video also with your friends, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay safe and be good.